What's happening, Hardscapers? This is episode 298 of the How to Hardscape podcast, where we talk about how you can start and grow your hardscaping business. And on today's episode, we have Sam Bauman back from Earthscape. This is a round 2 episode, and in the last episode, I highly suggest you go back and listen to that from last year. Sam is super transparent on the difficult time he went through in 2023 in his business, how he's rebounded from that, and how he continues to grow his business. So in today's episode, we get deep into the budgeting, marketing, and a comprehensive sales process in his business. We even do a little bit of role playing in this one too. So buckle up for this. And if you're looking for a software to dive into this season, check out the How to Hardscape Headquarters software at hthheadquarters.com. That's hthheadquarters.com to learn more about our budgeting, estimating, job costing, time tracking, scheduling, employee management, courses, and so much more available within that software. And before we get into today's episode, we want to say thank you to our sponsors. Cycle CPA. If you're looking for bookkeeping, accounting, CFO services, reach out to Cycle CPA at cyclecpa.com. Let them know How to Hardscape sent you for money off their services there. And Mosier. Tired of measuring the old-fashioned way? Well, the Mosier 2 Pro does it all, measuring, drawing, calculating, and even mapping out entire projects in minutes. I'm going to be using it on every consultation to get accurate dimensions, elevation data, and perfect quotes without the hassle of my typical hand notes, which costed me last year. If you want one, use the promo code X8Hardscape. That's X, the number 8 Hardscape at Mosier.com, or check the link in the description. And Knowledge Tree Consulting. George and Peter there are efficiency consultants in our industry, and I've had the privilege of having them both on one episode of the How to Hardscape podcast, and George multiple other times. Always great episodes, and I also got to sit down on a one-on-one with George and went through what they do for businesses, and I left that meeting with a lot of value, so I can't recommend them enough. If you want to learn more about what they do, go to knowledgetreeconsulting.com and get that conversation started with them today. And without further ado, let's get into today's episode with Sam. Today we're joined by a round 2 guest here, Sam Bauman from Earthscape, founder and president. If you haven't listened to our first episode, I highly suggest that you do go back to it. That'll also be linked in our show notes as well. Sam, thank you so much for joining us here for round 2.
You're welcome, Mike. It's a pleasure to be here.
Let's get started to ask you about last year and how last year ended. I had you on the podcast. I was actually on the way home from H&A, and that would be mid-October. So at that time, I believe you were on track to hit your sales goals or exceed them, and especially compared to year 2023, which you had mentioned was a difficult year, and we're very transparent about that. The end of the year, did it go as planned? How did everything kind of end up for you there?
Sure. Yeah, we have all our year-end financials wrapped up, and we ended up, our revenue was about 15% higher than what we budgeted. And for how we budget, if you beat your budgeted revenue, then you're gonna beat your budgeted profit. And so we had a record profit year. We were just around 16% net profit. So past our revenue, past our net profit, and that all, because we do share profit sharing, that means we're able to share quite a large sum of profit sharing to the team. So we have about 188,000 earmarked to share with the employees that work at Earthscape and the ones that are coming back. So overall, it was a very good year. I think we set fairly conservative goals because of getting stung in 2023. So yeah, it was a really good year, and now it's like, you get to the end of the year, you celebrate for one night, and then the clock starts over and we're back at it again. So now we're pushing hard to get sales and improve this year for 2025.
I do want to ask you about budgeting, but before that, your profit sharing, do you hold that off until like the start of the spring, just so you know who's coming back and who gets that profit sharing? Is there a certain kind of time that you release that?
Yeah, that's a great question. And we hand that out typically mid mid to late May. So from a cash flow perspective, we're bleeding lots of money in the winter. We don't currently do snow removal, so we're just spending lots of money and not much money is coming in. So we want to make sure that we get through the winter from a cash flow perspective, but also yes, we want to make sure we're giving the profit sharing to people who are coming back. That being said, a lot of our key staff, lead hands, crew leaders, designers, project managers, we keep them employed all year. So there's not really concern there of handing out and people leaving, but we just want to make sure we get through the winter and then, yeah, reward the people that come back. So I do think long term, we'd love to hand that out a couple times a year. It's tough, even though it's a large sum of money for some people, or for most of the team, it's a good chunk of cash, but it's so far away. So
Right.
they're getting rewarded in May for all the work they did. Some of the work was a year and a half ago, right? So all through the previous calendar year. So we'd love to be able to hand out maybe two installments, and we're starting to look into how we could do that. But yeah, to answer your question, it is May. We give it out in May for the previous year.
If you were to do it into installments, and maybe you haven't quite pictured this, but where would those two installments fall in place in the calendar and why for that?
Yeah, so tentatively, what we're thinking, and this is still in the early stages, but we'd thrown around the idea in our last executive team meeting, actually. Our annual meeting was doing the first installment in possibly September or October. So at that point, you've got most of your years baked. So you have a pretty good idea of where you're going to end up. And so you'd hand out maybe 25% of the total amount. So you'd weight it a bit lighter at the beginning, and then the remaining 75% would get handed out the previous year once everything is wrapped up. But at least gives people a taste, and you do want to, if we have the option, as long as the company's okay, we do want to pay people sooner and reward people sooner. So that's roughly 25, 75, 25 being handed out in the fall of the current year, and then 75 being handed out in the next year. But that's our rough plan. I'm open to feedback if you or someone else has any ideas on how they do that.
Yeah, that's interesting to hear the thought process behind that. I do want to ask you about budgeting now. As you had mentioned in the past, 2023, difficult year. 2024, as you mentioned, exceeded your revenue there. And then budgeting for 2025. I want to ask, 2023, when you were creating your budget for 2023, what oversights did you perhaps place within your budget that you struggled to kind of meet those sales goals? And then similarly to 2024, what did you edit or improve on your budget to then exceed your sales goals in 2024? And then if you want to touch on 2025, how has it changed from 2024 to 2025?
Yeah, sure. I could talk on this for the next half hour, but I'll try to keep it somewhat brief. So 2023, so I'll actually take you back a bit earlier than that. So 2021, these are the COVID years, we grew 50%. So we went from 6 million to 9 million, and really without, I mean, it was effort to get the work done, but so we in 2021 we grew 50%. 2022, we grew 30%. So now we're growing still rapidly. And so we said, hey, we're growing. We're going to keep growing. We do see the market potentially slowing down a little bit, but we're going to keep growing because we've grown historically. So, excuse me. So in 2023, we plan to grow another 10%. And what happened is we actually contract, and if you grow, you have to add overhead. So we added some designers, we added a lot of overhead wages and equipment and things like that. And so all that was set in place for us to grow another 10%. In reality, we actually contracted 20%. So we were almost 30% off your goal. And my advice to anyone is if you're not hitting your revenue goals, your sales goals, that's a hard one to correct when you start falling behind. So you can never cut costs too early. So we ended up cutting costs and cutting overhead expenses, but it was too late at that point. So although we stopped the bleeding to some extent, it was still when you're cutting costs in let's say August or September, and you're already 20% behind on your revenue, you can't, in my in my world, it's hard to correct that. So it was too late at that point. 2023, we just, hey, we've been growing in the past, so let's grow again. That was the thought process. Let's add all these expensive overhead components, and it would have all been fine if we would have hit that and continued to grow, but we didn't actually. We contracted, cut costs, but it was too late, and it was more or less I think we had 2%. We hit 2% net profit in 2023, which I would consider anything below 5%. I would consider that like a break even year. So 2024, we had been stung, so we set a goal of just growing about 10%, and we passed that. So 2024, we try to set our budget in the fall of the previous year. I think we could always do it a bit sooner, but in 2023, feeling the pain of 2023 and setting the budget for 2024, this is in like, let's call it October, November in 2023, we set pretty conservative goals. So I actually think our goal for 2024 was to do similar revenue to 2023, but make a profit. And so how do you do that? Well, we had to be lean and mean in 2024. So we had to cut a lot of costs. The people that stayed with the company, we all had to work harder, right? So everyone had to work harder, work a bit smarter, and really have a small business mentality of we got to make profit this year, and we're all gonna have to work a bit harder to get there. And so that's effectively what we did. We passed our revenue goals by 15% without hiring additional overhead staff. We spent a lot of time trying to maximize our like improve our processes and things like that. A lot of that was in sales and things like that. And that's kind of 2024 in a nutshell. Set a conservative goal, passed it, had to have a lean and mean attitude. And really that was the attitude that was talked about throughout the whole company. I touched on profit sharing already, and the advantage of profit sharing is that people aren't incentivized to do well. And if there's no profit, there's no profit sharing. So we between that and us being an employee-owned company, those things we were able to openly talk about and say, hey, everyone, if we want profit sharing, if we want to have dividends, we gotta get much more leaner and meaner, and we were able to do that. So now we're in 2025, and so I don't know if you have any questions before I jump into 2025.
Yeah, first and foremost, how do you get buy-in from employees when you have to sit down with them and say, "Hey, this year we need to work harder"? Is it as simple as talking about those dividends, talking about those profit sharing, or do you do anything else to be able to not just incentivize them, but to get that buy-in from employees that, hey, this year we're gonna have to work really hard?
Yeah, I mean that's a good question, and it's not one conversation, it's many conversations. There's company-wide conversations about talking about we are open, I'd call us open book management. So we were able to see the numbers and see, key metrics in the field, how we're doing and where we can improve. Also from the design side of things, I mean, it's kind of hard to hide within our company. So we talk about that on a company-wide level. And when you see divisional financials, you can see what divisions are struggling and which ones can improve. And hopefully people have an attitude here that it's okay to bear your issues out in public, because then you'll be able to get feedback and be accountable to it. So company-wide conversations, individual conversations, and yeah, I had, during last year and even 2023, I had many one-on-one conversations with employees, and I think that's I think that's a great thing where people feel comfortable they can come up and talk to me and maybe talk about their concerns, like their ideas, their concerns, and things like that. So um, yeah, lots of conversations, small groups, even divisional. We have conversations and things like that. But I I try to lead by example. I know it sounds cliche, but when I make a mistake, I try to be very open about it within the company, and hope that allows other people to be comfortable in that regard too. And yeah, I found that was super helpful. 2023, I bear the responsibility for that, and being able to tell the employees about that, I think creates them a comfort level for them to be open and honest about where to improve.
I also want to ask you about having to let go, especially those overhead employees, to make sure that you're more profitable in that season. Did you feel a employees not liking the decision? And I'm going to use a hockey reference for this. I don't know if you're a hockey fan, but I'm a Vancouver Canucks fan, and for the past couple of years, we've had struggles with players and being able to arguments between players, and now one of those players is gone, and they're saying that the players in the locker room think that they shipped out the wrong person. Did you have some sort of those struggles in your business when you had to kind of move on from employees? Or did people see the bigger picture, and were you able to kind of pitch the bigger picture of this is going to make us more profitable, and in the future we can add more employees to be able to get to where we want to be in our goals?
Yeah, that's a good question. So it's funny, Mike, like I live outside of Kitchener-Waterloo, or like an hour and a half out of Toronto, and you're in the Toronto area. You're a Vancouver Canucks fan, and I'm a Vancouver Canucks fan.
Amazing.
So we'll have to have separate conversations about that when you're talking about the sports analogy and what Vancouver's went through, and like getting rid of one of the better players that may or may not have been a toxic
Yeah.
create a toxic culture. Yeah, I think we'll have to talk about Canucks off script or off air, but I think the sports analogy is fair. Everyone is different, and so I think everyone takes change differently as well. And that's the reminder. That was my biggest reminder through this whole process is some people want to talk through things. Some people want to have multiple conversations about it. That's okay. And the next person says, Sam, that all makes sense. I trust in your ability. You've got us to where we are now, and um, I assume you're making decisions in the company's best interest and my best interest, and that's it. So I think it's very, very much an individual case by case basis. You try to try to do what's best for the company, but there's everyone is a little bit different. So I'm not sure if that answered your question at all, but letting people go, there was definitely a lot of fear in the air. Once through I mean, once again, if you let go of 3 or 5 staff, that sucks. That's not fun for anyone. Um, it's the worst part of my job. But how do people react to that? It's just kind of the example I said. One person will means nothing to them. They say, "Hey, I mean that's no fun, but I'm getting back to work, and I trust you're doing what's best for the company." And the next person may have some extreme anxiety about their own job and their fear of where the company is going.
Yeah.
So I think it's yeah, case by case. You want to have those individual conversations and make sure that people are comfortable with talking you through these things. I mean, those were like some really stressful times.
We want to take a break from today's episode to thank our sponsor, Cycle CPA. It's crucial to review your financial statements on a monthly basis so you can diagnose areas for improving your business's financial health early before they become significant issues. Too many contractors wait until the end of the year to review their financials as they file taxes, when it's often too late to take action to change the outcome. Cycle CPA not only handles bookkeeping and taxes, but they also ensure that you're armed with financial data on a monthly basis to make key business decisions. They offer benchmarking, cash flow forecasting, and assistance in developing targets for financial metrics. With their team of accountants specialized in the hardscape and landscape industry, they currently work with hundreds of companies in this field. Visit cyclecpa.com, and for $200 off, mention the How to Hardscape podcast. Now back to our episode. And since you are open book management, are you able to kind of point at the numbers and show them like, hey, now we're at this, and if we continue to work hard through this is, we're good, and we're able to then look at next year and look towards our goals next year. Did that
Yeah,
help, basically?
100%. I mean, we've been open in some degree. We've been open book management for since our inception, which is almost 20 years ago. Um, so that's how I've been taught to manage is to manage by the numbers and be able to use those as a tool to manage. So I think it makes my job very easy to be able to be a manager with open book management. I mean, here are the numbers. And so I think the flip side of that is I think it'd be very challenging if I've got A-level employees or people who want to know how we're doing, and for me to say just trust me. I can't show you the numbers, but trust me, these are the decisions we need to make. And all these we have to terminate all these people because just trust me.
Yeah.
So I find that as a managing in that regard, it makes my job a lot easier.
So then getting into the 2025 budget, at what point do you start start discussions about the 2025 budget, create the budget, and what are the differences between the 2024 budget now and that 2025 budget?
Just to rewind a little bit,
Yep.
we've set budgets for as long as I can remember, and when the budget gets complete has been a little different every year. So you even up until like I'd say 3 years ago, we were wrapping up our budget in March, and so that I think is a little late. Um, it worked for us, and you got to do what you got to do, so it was okay. But we're now like right now our budget's complete. We started this year, we started a conversation back in October. So we have initial conversations with our controller and and our operations manager and myself. So the three of us start talking about things. What's going to change from the previous year? What are the big numbers? What are our sales going to be? That's like the $1 million number, and that's the toughest one to know. So we start the conversation in October, and really we had, I would say by Christmas we had it 95% complete, and then it's just between Christmas and the month of January, there's just some minor tweaks of getting the divisional budget set up and things like that. So we're all set. We got our divisional numbers, and we have our net profit set and all that, and we're good to go.
One thing that you touched on our last interview, I always ask business owners when they come on, what are they struggling with right now? You mentioned training, and you had also mentioned during the interview that you were thinking about hiring somebody in as a trainer or outsourcing that, I believe. Did you make a decision on that, or is that something that's still up in the air coming into the spring here?
Yeah, so we had a job posting up for looking for a trainer, um, and we weren't able to find that position and that person, but we still have to train. So we've kind of abandoned finding that person. Our operations manager has been heavily involved in that. That was one of the company goals and also one of his quarterly rocks. I'm using traction terminology for people who follow that, but he kind of that was one of his big rocks for this previous quarter is to get that set up. So what we did is we kind of we looked into where where our biggest gaps were between divisions, and from a production side standpoint, we saw a lot of opportunities to improve. So we identified the areas we need to improve, and then we put a training plan in place for it. We're still tweaking it, and you know what? And you talk to me in a year from now, and I'll say here's what we did, and here's where we're going. I think our training program is always going to be evolving, but a couple of things that we've learned is that it generally has to be hands-on so people can physically see it, and then they have to be tested on it because if you're not tested on it, you're not going to improve on it, and then there has to be follow-up on your test score. So
Right.
we're that's kind of the rough outline. We've got about four different things we're training on. We're going to have quizzes for them, and then we're going to be able to follow up with the employees on their and really it's not a pass or fail thing. It's really identify what areas that you're lacking in, and then help you improve on those so you can improve on your job. And so that's kind of like a brief overview of where we're going. Like I said, it'll probably look quite a bit different in 6 months from now. There's a company I went and visited. I may have mentioned this on our last podcast, Ryan Lawn and Tree. They're about 8 times their size. I think they're around doing about 80 million in the US, and they are a training. They've got a training culture, and they've got full-time I'd call them teachers there, and just looking at their training program for their different divisions was really eye-opening for me. And they actually gave their lead trainer. He's got a better term for his job title, but his lead trainer had some really good book suggestions for us, and that was kind of led us in the right direction to at least get started on it. So I know there's Greenius. A lot of companies are using that. I think that checks a lot of the boxes. We just found that we had the way we do things is very specific to Earthscape, and even when new employees show up, it's funny. We joke about installing a tree. There's like 15 different ways you can install a tree, where you think there's only one way to install a tree, like put it in the ground. But there's so many different ways, and so for us, we had to, as we're bringing on new employees, they may have a install technique from the previous company. Whether it's right or wrong doesn't actually is not really relevant. It's like here is our standard. We want everyone within Earthscape doing something the same way.
If and when you were creating your 2025 budget and you were wanting to hire this trainer and you incorporate, or if you did or didn't incorporate that overhead salary into that 2025 budget, but you realize that position's not going to be filled, is it just a matter of then just allocating that overhead expense for that employee to unbillable training hours basically, or is it nullified is what I'm asking, or do you edit the budget and take that out completely?
Yeah, so that's a good question. It kind of depends on the time of year. So that specific individual, we would have had in a rough budget in October, and we made the decision. I think that was like before Christmas, that we're just going to do it internally. So we removed that. We just removed it from the budget. There's no point. But once we get into the year now, generally we don't want to touch the budget, because the budget is that's baked for the year. And if that specific individual, if we say, hey, we're not going to hire that overhead cost this year, that would end up just being going straight to the bottom line, and our profit would look higher. So it is that is very much an investment for the future. But that's a couple different scenarios on how we would do that.
And then getting into marketing now, setting a marketing budget. And I know I'm touching so much on budget now, and we will transfer to actual marketing and sales here. But since we are talking about budgeting for a marketing amount for the year, is this something that you look at what you spent last year and you increase it based on your sales goals by a certain percentage? But also, like 2023, you didn't necessarily know that was going to be a difficult year when you were budgeting for marketing then. Um, how often do you look at how much you're going to need to increase in spend and update your budget to reflect that increase in marketing spend?
Yeah, so this is a big topic I spent a lot of time thinking about. So high level, we're budgeting just under 2% of our revenue is going into marketing cost. I've heard that number. I've heard other companies have higher numbers, other companies have much lower numbers. That's where we feel we need to be. I think last year it was around 1.6% of our revenue was marketing spend. And yeah, we look at that monthly. I look at that very closely because that's a big part of our overhead cost. And so we look at that monthly. A lot of our marketing cost goes into Google Ads. And so that's a between that and the management fee of those Google Ads, that's a big part of it. So when we're looking at our marketing spend, because a lot of it is Google Ads, I've got monthly meetings with our Google Ads manager, and we kind of review strategy, what we spent, how much we just spent, what we budgeted. I've got a whole separate budgeting spreadsheet for Google Ads alone, and we compare our budgeted to our actual by division, by month. It's a lot of, it does take a bit of effort, but when you're spending six figures on something that's in overhead, I think it's worthwhile to watch very closely. And because I mean sales drive the company, and based on our previous bad experiences, it's something that is even more important for us to watch closely. So yeah, did that answer your
Yeah,
question?
absolutely. We want to take a break from today's episode to thank our sponsor, Mosier. I'm going to be using the Mosier 2 Pro on all my consultations moving forward here. In the past, what I've done is brought a tape measure, measuring wheel, rotary laser level, along with a notepad to write down all my elevations and measurements. In addition to bringing product catalogs and samples, it's a lot to bring on every consultation. It would take me way too long to take measurements and elevations while writing them them down on an inaccurate, not to scale drawing on my notepad and then try to translate those from my sketch to my design software and hope I write those measurements down correctly and in the right place. When I found out about Moser, I knew it would replace all of those tools for my consultations. I recently got my hands on a Moser 2 Pro, which captures measurements, draws, calculates areas, perimeters, volume, elevations, and lays out the entire project on your device. And then you can export it into your design software and having a working terrain map to begin my designs while also being more accurate in my quoting process. If you want to get your hands on a Moser 2 Pro, use the promo code X8Hardscape. That's X, the number 8 Hardscape at Moser.com, or simply click the link in the show notes. Now back to our episode. Different marketing avenues. A couple things that we touched on the last episode. Google Ads was your biggest one. Facebook ads, you guys kind of dabbled in it. You also network with builders and designers, a big thing. Is there anything that you're going to introduce this year in terms of marketing as a new avenue? Are you going to touch more on Facebook ads? Is it all full force into Google ads? What about the website? Yeah, anything that you're doubling down on or introducing new into the marketing side of things?
Yeah, that's a great question. One little thing we're doing, we've noticed last year we started getting more leads from our road signs. And when I say road signs, it's basically our logos, our wraps on our trucks, and then obviously the road signs that we leave on every job site. So we're doubling down on that. We're doing a bit more logos on our job sites. Even our maintenance trailers, we're getting better signage so that when they're parked on a site and their back tailgates flip down, if you're coming up from the back of an enclosed trailer with the tailgate flip down on the road, you see nothing. Like you don't know what company that is. So we got some big custom pylons set up with an Earthscape logo on it so that people will be able to see. We'll see that. I mean, it's relatively cheap cost, and because we got a significant amount of work from our signage, we're just dumping more money into that. And so we're doing that. We are doubling down on builders. So our Toronto division struggled last year. And so we're putting more effort, even though the company did good as a whole, our Toronto division struggled. And I think a lot of companies struggled in Toronto, but we're putting more effort into trying to find builders. And the tough thing with that is that it involves getting your hands dirty and having lots of uncomfortable conversations. And most of them don't lead anywhere, but we just want one or two of those to stick. And so we're putting a bit more effort into that. And our Google Ads budget is higher this year than it was last year. So we're dumping more money into that. I would encourage though to your listeners though, because the more of us that do it, the more we all have to pay. Wink, wink.
Yeah.
That's just a joke. They can do it. It does work well for us, but yeah, I think those are the three big things. And I listened to a podcast by a company, and their lead sales guy for their maintenance team said he does 2x4 marketing. And so it's for maintenance, you go wherever you have an existing client. And in maintenance is all about route density. So wherever you have an existing client, you go to the two neighbors, and then you go four across the road. So 2x4, two neighbors, four neighbors across the road. You knock on the door, you introduce yourself, you let them know where you're working, where you're maintaining, and having more awkward conversations. So we're going to do more of that. Our maintenance account manager is going to be putting effort into that, and he's got some time blocked out in his schedule to do that in early spring. So
How do you do a conversation like that? Or have you thought, like a script that your operations manager can go door to door like that, those 2x4 doors? Is it, introducing yourself and, hey, we're going to be making noise here when we're on site. Sorry about the noise, but hey, here's our company if you're interested. Or do you have a certain kind of style to go about that awkward conversation there?
yeah, well, we can do some role playing right now, and I can show you how it's how we think it'll go. But I
Yeah.
will say before we do that, I will say our landscape job sites, we're dropping. It's the crew actually on the very first day. They're delivering door hangers to the neighborhood. It's a really nice custom door hanger. It says basically, "We're in the neighborhood. Sorry for the dust. If you have any concerns about it, please contact our office. Here's our contact info." And that has actually been really good. We've gotten comments from the neighbors saying, "Wow, you guys are so proactive.
Nice.
Um, yeah, I know you're in landscaping making a mess, but I appreciate you at least being proactive and letting us know where you are." And we've gotten some work from that. So that's for the construction side of things. For the
Going
maintenance
off that
side,
really quick, sorry.
yeah,
Do you
yeah,
ever
yeah.
give gift cards to the direct neighbors or anything like that? I've heard guys like giving free car wash or whatever to the side by side neighbors, or just a gift card in general, just to be like, hey, sorry about the noise that we're going to be making for the next 4 weeks or so here.
So we've done that. I think the last time we did that was like 10 years ago, and just found it got expensive. And the car wash thing, are people going to use it? I'm not too sure. I like the on paper. I think it's cute and it makes sense, but we just find delivering this brochure that says who we are, um, has been created the same effect and cost a lot less. So yeah, I think your idea makes sense. We tried a couple of times, and I'm not sure our the neighbors care so much and are going to go to that specific car wash to wash their car. Their time is more valuable than saving $20 on a car wash or whatever.
Okay, yeah, getting back on track there to the sales script there.
Yeah, so let's do some role playing in sales. We have to do role playing, and it's a bit awkward, but
Yeah,
this is how we all get better at doing it. So why don't we pretend that you're the neighbor
yep.
and I'm the maintenance account manager. So I'm knocking on your door, and you have no idea I'm coming, but I'm just knocking on the door and I'm introducing myself. So knock, knock, knock. Hey there.
Hey, where are you?
Very good. Hey, I'm Sam with Earthscape. I'm really sorry to bother you. Do you have a minute?
I got a little bit of a minute. Yeah, sure.
Perfect. So, hey, we're just maintaining the Mr. and Mrs. Jones right across the road from you. We've been maintaining their place for a couple years. I just want to let you know we're in the neighborhood, and if you're interested in any services, I'd love to chat and help you out. I did notice, you have a beautiful landscape, by the way. I've noticed that a couple of your shrubs on the right hand side are starting to look a little sick. And I do have a little technique for you. I know you got to run, but I have a little technique for you. You can use a high nitrogen fertilizer for that. But if you want to have a no obligation walk around of your property, I'd love to be able to chat and figure out how to make your landscape a little better than it is currently.
I currently have a guy that comes like once a month, once every other month, to do a little bit of work here and there. Is this something that you guys can take control of or talk to us about your pricing there?
For sure. Yeah, I mean, but before I give a price, I'd like to kind of do a little bit of a deep dive into your site, talk about what's important to you and anyone else, any other decisions makers in your house. But yeah, we have weekly and monthly programs for our clients, and we try to be the one-stop shop for everything outside. So although we sometimes work with sub trades and specialty trades, we want to look after everything and be the point of contact outside to make our clients' lives a bit easier. So
Got it.
yeah.
And do you have somebody I can contact or your information?
Yeah, so I'm the person to talk to. I've got my business card right here in a brochure, and if you're open to it, I can actually, if you'd be open to give me your contact info, I could send you a quick email and we could set something up. But if you're not comfortable with that, no problem. I'll just leave you my contact info.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right, have a good day.
Awesome, Sam. So
Slam.
sold. So from something like that, where do you take that? They've got your contact information. Do you try to get their contact information as well? And do you make the point to call them after a specific number of days, email them after a specific number of days, or where does that start?
Absolutely. So a salesperson who's following the book would get there, ask for their contact info, like I did, but then also say, "Hey, so I've got your contact info. I'm gonna reach out to you in the next 24 hours, and hopefully we can set something up." And then what you're supposed to actually do is ask for permission and say, "Hey, so in 24 hours I'm gonna reach out to you. If I don't hear back from you, what kind of timeline could I reach out to you again?" And what the client's going to say or the prospect is going to say is, "Oh yeah, no, you can reach out. Try it in a week. If you don't hear from me for another week, then reach out and say, okay, in 1 week's time, I'm going to do that." And what you're doing is you're getting permission, and then you're not actually having to be the
Got
nag
it.
there. And
Yeah,
that's like a
yeah.
classic. That's like a that's just following sales 101 that I've been taught from other people.
I like that. Ask for permission. And if they still don't talk to you in a week, if they say in a week's time, what happens from there?
Yeah, so if you in a week's time you don't hear from them, you follow up again, and if you don't hear from them again, what you want to do is really just end it. So it's I'm trying to think of the proper term, but you're actually telling them, hey, I've reached out a couple times without success, which probably means one of two things. You've either gone with another contractor or you don't want to work with us, and that's no problem. No problem. What I'll do is I'm going to close the account, and but feel free to reach out anytime you want to pick up this conversation. We use that. It's kind of bothering me. I don't know that term. I don't have the top of my tongue, but we use that for our sales for our construction side of things too. Someone reaches out, they fill out a consultation form, we reach out again, and it's so annoying for everyone when people don't want to say no and cut you off. So what you're doing is you're actually giving them permission um, to say no, and you're also closing the account. So you're saying, hey, I haven't heard from you, which this is what it probably means. I am going to close the account unless you say anything else. And it is amazing how many times people respond and say, no, no, don't close the account. Sorry, I've been busy. And or they don't respond, and that's fine. You have washed your hands of it, and you can move on to the next thing. And that yeah, that works really well. I'll actually email you. I don't know if you have notes in your podcast, but I'll email you the proper term for that and like the script that we have.
That's awesome. That would be
Yeah.
amazing. Yeah, and I'll put that in the show notes for our listeners there. What about follow up for proposals? Is that a little bit more lenient in terms of bugging somebody because you've kind of gone through consultations and put your time and invested into that? Follow up for proposals, what does that kind of look like?
Sure. So, I mean, when you say proposal, you're saying like a quotation or
Yeah,
construction proposal?
yeah,
Yeah. I mean, that we're not quoting projects very often that don't have a design associated with it. So, really, the client's paid for design. We've had multiple meetings with them to get to this stage, and so I guess what I'm trying to get at is we don't have that issue very often at all. They've already invested a lot of time and some money with us to get to where we're at. But I do think if we do some, quote only projects and we very rarely win them. Not sure why we do them, to be honest, but sometimes you have existing relationships with builders, so you quote the stuff. But I would use the same strategy. Hey, and really, ideally, you're saying, well, first of all, you want to present your quote whenever possible. Do not just email it. Now you're just a number. So ideally, you've got whether you're working directly for a builder or a homeowner, say, hey, homeowner, I've got the proposal already. Let me know and we can set up a meeting so I can review it with you. That really helps you out a lot in explaining numbers. And instead of clients saying, whoa, what is this? What is this $20,000 patio all about? You can actually explain what is behind that number. And but if they're demanding just send me the quote, just send me the quote. Well, in my world, you're already probably dead. But it's not a great sign when they don't even want to meet with you to review their proposal. But I would also just if you got to email it, say no problem. When can I reach out? If I once I send this, when can I reach out to follow up to do that? But internally we will not send. We're not supposed to send proposals just via email. We should have a meeting set up, even though the client has already paid for design and we have the relationship there. We just think it's so much better to be able to review that over even if it's a Google Meet or a virtual meeting, that's totally fine.
Do you try to do it if it's not virtual? Do you try to do it in their house or have them come over to Earthscape? How do you go about that?
Yeah, that's a good question. In their house typically, I'd like to say we were good at getting people to come to our office, which is actually a nice facility, and there's a glass boardroom and things like that. But a lot of the times we're in their place. I know if sales strategy is you should always be negotiating in your own turf, so you should get them to come to your facility. And so I think, I'm saying how we do it, but not necessarily that's the best way of doing it. Um, but we do a lot of meetings virtually. We'll sell $500,000 jobs to our clients, and we've only, had one or two in-person meetings.
Wow.
There's a lot of it's a lot of virtual.
Okay. So, during that virtual meeting, how do you kick things off with them? Is it getting right into the design? Do you break down the quote with them as well as the design and the different work areas, prices associated with those work areas? And then, I don't want to overwhelm you with this. We'll start with that, but I also want to ask you, how do you kind of close that meeting and not necessarily the sale, but what do you do? Do you ask for the sale at the end of that meeting?
Sure. So, where do I start? So before our prospects sign up for construction, they have to buy a design. And before they purchase a design, we have a lot of talk about numbers. And most of our clients, most of our prospects, including you and your listeners, have no idea what things cost. Like no idea. And so it's our responsibility to educate them. And so we really want to talk about numbers a lot with that prospect. And so once we get their wish list, we tell them, hey, we're gonna put a detailed price guide together, and we're gonna put that together. It's probably gonna be a lot more than what you're expecting, prospect, because you said you wanted a pool and a landscape for $100,000. Well, just as a heads up, the pool alone is $100,000, and generally on projects that we're involved in, the landscaping around the pool is generally $100,000 minimum, and it's going to go up pretty fast from there. But what I'll do is I'll get your wish list. After I've got your wish list, we're going to talk about some rough numbers associated with all the things that you want, and then I'm also going to send you if you approve that price guide, then I'm going to send you a proposal for design. And if you don't approve that, we might just go our separate ways, or we talk about how we can adjust your scope of work and your wish list down to a number that you're comfortable with. So we're having, I'm talking in and out of role playing here with you, but we're having lots of conversations talking about numbers and before they sign up for design. Once they sign up for design, like last year, we converted 87% of our construction clients, our design clients into construction. So I would say we're converting at a pretty high clip. Because of that, that's a lot of it is just because we're talking numbers and we got a pretty dialed in scope. So once they say, yes, I'm okay with this price guide, which is a range that you gave me, I want to pay for design. We say, great. So our design fee is $5,000. 100% is that due up front. They pay that, and then we jump right into the design phase. As we're designing, it should be, if we follow our process, the design is going to match what the client is willing to spend, what they've agreed to, and then it's easy. I mean, it's not nothing's easy, but it should be fairly straightforward and there's no big surprises. Where we get into trouble is if a client says, "Yeah, I agreed to that scope and that price guide, but why don't you just throw a pergola in there, or why don't we just upgrade all these trees in size?" And then if we say that's going to be more expensive, that's where we get in trouble because expensive is a relative term. And what the client thinks is expensive and what we think is expensive are two different numbers. So if a client wants to add scope, we're going to say, that's great. Let me update the price guide and give you some different price options here before we start going into the design. And so I guess what I'm saying is by the time you get to a completed design, you give them a proposal, which is now the fixed price, there's no surprise there. They've already agreed to that number before we started the design phase.
So lots of questions coming off of that. The price guide. How do you communicate the Earthscape value to a client, especially if it's a client that found you through, say, a Google ad? I'm sure that Google ad leads them to a landing page that has some sort of communication of the Earthscape value. But besides that, where's the communication in terms of why they should go with Earthscape and then to get them signed up for that initial design?
Yeah, for sure. So I think our lowest conversion rates come from Google Ads because people aren't necessarily familiar with our company. Even though they go on our website, they may have not really know what things cost and who Earthscape is and what our value add is. I think when we work with builders or client referrals, they already have an idea of who Earthscape is and they know that we're expensive. They know that we're going to provide an amazing experience and provide an amazing product and amazing design, but it all comes at a higher price point. So we have pre-qualification questions we ask. Have you been to our website? What specific projects do you like on our website? And really force them to do homework about our company. It doesn't happen often, but sometimes we'll get a consultation request we'll reach out to the prospect and they'll say, yeah, I'm gonna be honest with you. I went on your website, I saw your work. I don't think I'm looking for what you guys have. Like you guys seem pretty expensive. And we go, yeah, we are fairly expensive, so no problem. And we they pre-qualify themselves. It doesn't happen often, but it does happen. And by the way, for your listeners, I'm talking about Earthscape's company. I think, those smaller projects and different types of work. Or every company has their niche of what they're good at. Earthscape is just not good at doing the small jobs. Um, and most of our stuff has design. So it's just I think it's asking questions and pre-qualifying them pretty hard so that we don't end up designing stuff that's not going to get built.
Got it. And then so yeah, price guide. Okay, so at the end of the design presentation, at that point, since it's 87% conversion right there, do you ask for that sale right then and there? Or is it we'll send you the proposal via email, just let us know, and then follow up with them from that?
Yeah, we try to let the client make the decision or create the illusion that they're making the decision.
Okay.
And so once the sometimes what will happen is we have to do a revision of a quote or a proposal. So if there's a major change, we'll say, hey, client, what I'll do is I'm going to revise this proposal. We crunched some rough numbers here, and the change we made is going to adjust the scope by $30,000 roughly. So no surprises there. What's going to happen though is you we don't put projects into our construction schedule until we get a deposit. So I don't want this to come across the wrong way, but you're not a real client, construction client, until we get a deposit. So no rush on my end, but the ball's in your court. We are booking into July currently, so if that timeline's not a rush for you, then you're not as rushed to give us a deposit. But if you want to get in sooner and get you locked in the schedule, then we would need that deposit. So that's kind of how that conversation goes. Usually it involves saying you're not a, every conversation comes back to saying like you're not a real client until we get a deposit. And so that sounds kind of harsh, and so you can word it differently, but we try to ask for the deposit right away. It's like, okay, because the other option is like, okay, client, we're making these minor design revisions. We've gone through the numbers. It's going to adjust the scope by this much. Are you comfortable with giving us a deposit for construction now? And why I asked that client is that once we have that deposit, I'm going to introduce you to a project manager, and we're going to get you into give you a firm start timeline, and then we can start ordering materials and all that, all the planning. You have to get permits and all that starts. But unfortunately, I can't do any of that until we have some money as a deposit. But we don't want to force people to
Yeah.
it's like yeah, once again, like basic sales is like you want to give them all the facts so they can make a decision, but not tell them to do anything.
Gotcha. And throughout the sales process, are you giving them, do you have like some sort of system in terms of the steps that they are currently at and where they get to before they actually get their project? Or are you just communicating like that next step? So consultation, after consultation, then we'll go to the next step. Yeah, how do you go about kind of communicating? They want to get started right away, but they have to go through a pre-qualifying. They have to go through a consultation. They have to go through a design. They have to get to the actual sign up for that project.
Sure. So we have our process on our website, and we encourage clients to read through that. I don't think many of them do, and I don't blame them, but we 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 outline that for them, but we also communicate that to them. Here's the next step. Here's what I'm going to do. Here's the timeline, and really just be trying to lead them, telling what the next step is, and really what we're going to be requiring from them too. So, hey, client, I'm going to send you a design. I should have that to you within 2 to 3 weeks. Is that okay with you? Yes. What's going to happen then is I'm going to send you the design, but also before that, I'm going to set up a time for us to review it. And so we're going to set that up, and really every meeting is set up with a following meeting so that you're not left hanging at any step in the process. It's good for the client. It's also good for us, where it's kind of like the proposal. You don't want to just give it to them. You also just don't want to give them the design. You want to be able to explain that, go over next steps, and lead them through the whole process.
We want to take a break from today's episode to thank our sponsor, Knowledge Tree Consulting. They are efficiency consultants in the industry with 35 plus years of industry experience building Oriole landscaping in Toronto, which they are completely hands off at this point. George and Peter have been on the podcast before, and George, on multiple occasions now, I've personally leaned on him to help with the How to Hardscape headquarters software and how we can maximize the efficiency of user experience. And I know the guys at DTE Landscaping, Chuck and Jeffrey, who we've also had on the show multiple times, have hired them on in the past. Check out their consulting services, peer groups, and events that are coming up on their website, knowledgetreeconsulting.com, or check them out on Instagram at joinktc. Now back to our episode.
Marketing to find your ideal client. Google Ads is a big spend for you. It's difficult to, as you had mentioned, there's lots of leads that come through that also aren't for you. But what has been the best way to market to find your ideal client, or language that you use to market to get that ideal client, or offline strategies and so on and so forth?
Yeah, that's a good question. Um, I think it's trying to, so in, I mentioned traction previously, but that kind of, outline, you should kind of outline a marketing plan of what your ideal client is. So, geographical, where is your client ideally geographically to you? Um, Also, what income bracket what does your ideal client look like in terms of, income, neighborhood? Are they business owners? Are they tradespeople? I mean, all that, thinking about that, and then, thinking how they make decisions. So for us, one thing that's important is our clients align with our core values. And so, do they care about the people they're working beside? Or are they just trying to beat on us and get the best possible price? If that's what they're looking for, we're probably not, we don't really want to work with them, and we're not a good fit. So I think outlining all those things, some of it is a bit aspirational. So it's like the clients you're working with today may be a stepping stone to get to the clients you want to work with tomorrow. And so I think it's like it's mixing the clients you're going to fit within today, but also uh, setting your marketing and your website and your image for the clients that you're aspiring to work with as well. We've got our niche is for clients is like, our ideal projects are between 100 and $500,000. We do some projects below that range. We do a couple above that range, but we find that's kind of our sweet spot. That's where we can provide really good value to our clients. And so, and we're design build. So in your market in Toronto, a lot of the big seven-figure projects are going to landscape architects, and then it goes out to bid, goes out to tender. We're not the right fit for those projects, because at that point you're just a number, I think, and it's hard to win those. But yeah, I don't know if that answered your question.
Yeah, that was a pretty big question to ask you as we've got just a few minutes left here. Anyways, but Sam, as we do wrap up, you've mentioned a lot of great things in terms of sales, certain words that you use, especially to put the ball in the client's court, the door-to-door script there. Is there anything else that you think that we may have left out? Certain, you know, even if it is just like a line that you mentioned that has helped your sales process, or certain key steps in the sales process, anything that I'm sure there's plenty that we could have a whole nother podcast just on diving deeper into the sales process, but anything else that you'd kind of want to mention here that has helped you along the way, or you've been able to teach your salespeople that has helped them along the way there?
Sure. So a couple of things. I'm going to do a little plug for what Earthscape is trying to do in our next steps here. But I will say, running a business and life is a bunch of there's not very many silver bullets or big secrets that you can take your company to, double in size or something like that. So I think it's being okay with making a lot of little decisions, and a lot of those little decisions and improvements will all add up to make big improvements. And if you're in for the long haul, like we are here at Earthscape, you're going to see big improvements, but it takes a long time. So just keep chipping away, make small improvements on your business, and it'll have a big impact over a long period of time. My other plug for Earthscape is one thing I'm doing right now is spending time looking into acquisitions and mergers and acquisitions within the landscape industry. And so if anyone is interested in what it would look like to join with Earthscape, I'd be happy to chat with them. We're based out of the Greater Toronto area. We've got a location in Toronto and a location in Kitchener-Waterloo, but we're looking to add additional services to our mix. So we're looking into potentially tree service companies, lawn care, lawn maintenance companies, and that's the other avenue we see we can keep growing. You can only sell so much of the same thing within your existing market, and that's my little plug.
That opens up a whole another avenue of questions that I would want to ask you. But Sam, we'll cut it off right there. And perhaps a round 3 is in our future if you'd ever want to come back on. Sam, thanks so much for your time. Where can our audience go learn more about you and Earthscape, and anywhere you want to send them to there?
Sure. So, earthscape.ca is our website, and I believe my contact info is on there, but it's sam@earthscape.ca. Happy to chat with people. And I am on LinkedIn. I'm not on there as often as I should be. Shame on me, but I do check it out every once in a while to make sure I'm not losing contact with anyone.
Perfect. Sam, thanks so much for your time.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you for listening to today's podcast episode. If you found value in this one, please share it wherever you can. Let other hardscapers know that this podcast exists, and I would thank you so much for doing so. Leave a rating, review, Apple, Spotify, wherever you can. That really does help the podcast, helps us continue to get some amazing guests on this podcast. And if you're looking for software to dive into this season, check out the How to Hardscape headquarters software, which will help you budget, estimate, time track, job costs, schedule, create courses for safety training videos for your employees. Use our courses, our interlock installation, segmental retaining wall installation for yourself or for your employees, all within the software. Go to htheadquarters.com to learn more and book a demo with me there. And before we go, we want to say thank you to our sponsors. Cycle CPA. If you're looking for bookkeeping, accounting, CFO services, reach out to Cycle CPA at cyclecpa.com. Let them know How to Hardscape sent you for money off their services there. And Moser. Tired of measuring the old-fashioned way? Well, the Moser 2 Pro does it all, measuring, drawing, calculating, and even mapping out entire projects in minutes. I'm going to be using it on every consultation to get accurate dimensions, elevation data, and perfect quotes without the hassle of my typical hand notes, which costed me last year. If you want one, use the promo code X8Hardscape. That's X, the number 8 Hardscape at Moser.com, or check the link in the description. And Knowledge Tree Consulting. George and Peter there are efficiency consultants in our industry, and I've had the privilege of having them both on one episode of the How to Hardscape podcast, and George multiple other times. Always great episodes, and I also got to sit down on a one-on-one with George and went through what they do for businesses, and I left that meeting with a lot of value, so I can't recommend them enough. If you want to learn more about what they do, go to knowledgetreeconsulting.com and get that conversation started with them today. And we look forward to meeting you next week on the How to Hardscape podcast.